Hi, I'm Antonio Mora. If you think that the COVID-19 pandemic is no worse than a bad year of the flu, you probably should stop watching this now because we won't have common ground. More than 10,000 people have died from COVID-19 complications in just the past week. Over the next week, even more will die. It may take all of 3 weeks to see as many deaths from coronavirus infections as we see in a whole average year of the flu. And the extent of the suffering caused by the disease and hospitalizations goes well beyond the death toll. The horrific numbers are despite stay-at-home orders affecting more than 300 million Americans. Estimates of how damaging the pandemic could have been without aggressive intervention are mind-boggling. Without those stay-at-home orders, it would have exploded, the healthcare system would have collapsed, and the long-term economic consequences would have been even worse. At this point, the science is clear, and many who thought the disease could be no worse than the flu, including President Trump, have stopped arguing that. You're in denial otherwise. That doesn't mean we shouldn't fear what could turn out to be a very serious secondary pandemic, a threat to the U.S. that will have many facets, including severe economic, psychological, social, and public health crises. The intentional and needed shutdown of the U.S. economy has already had devastating effects. The trillions of dollars in spending approved to cushion the economic devastation will be a burden to generations of Americans. Worse yet, about 10% of American workers have already filed for unemployment benefits, and the unemployment rate could reach, even surpass, the level seen during the Great Depression. J.P. Morgan now says U.S. GDP could plummet by 40% in the second quarter and unemployment could top 20%. A sharp recession will punish everyone. The loss of wealth, as markets have plummeted, has been staggering. More important, the loss of income, even if partially supplanted by government stimulus programs, will be devastating to many American families. People will struggle to afford housing and food. The longer the economy stays shut down, the longer the recovery will take, and the longer the suffering. All of this will have major mental health consequences. The Holmes and Rahe stress scale rates the loss of a job to be among the most stressful, life-altering events, much worse than the death of a close friend or a foreclosure on your house. Also, a Fox News poll found 91% of Americans are very or somewhat concerned about an economic recession, 79% about economic hardship. We're also worried about our health. A CNN poll found 6 in 10 say they are not comfortable returning to their routines if social distancing ends on April 30th. A YouGov poll found 70% of us are concerned about the health of the American people. As you'd expect, all those worries add up to an awful lot of anxiety. 55% of Americans say the pandemic has affected their mental health, according to another recent survey. And that's no surprise, because social isolation and loneliness are linked to a series of mental health problems. It's already having some frightening consequences. Calls to the Federal Disaster Distress Helpline are reportedly up 500%. As the pandemic worsens and the isolation stretches out, police departments across the country are reporting double-digit spikes in domestic violence, and incidents are increasing around the world. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres described the rise in domestic violence as horrifying. He called on governments to make the prevention and redress of violence against women a key part of their national response plans for COVID-19. Our physical health is also suffering. Many diets are being abandoned, and with gyms closed, there's little doubt most of us are exercising less. Patients aren't filling their prescriptions out of fear of pharmacies or because of financial problems. Others aren't going to their doctors or hospitals to get treated for non-coronavirus health issues. While the evidence so far is anecdotal, in an informal Twitter survey by an online community of cardiologists, half of respondents reported a 40 to 60% reduction in admissions for heart attacks. People may be afraid to go to the hospital. To conclude, we need a rational conversation now about what comes next. We need to pivot from staying at home to a gradual, careful reopening of American society. That will require serious, nonpartisan analysis of what can return to normal and what can't. The answer may vary geographically and chronologically. Businesses may be able to open in some areas, but not in others. Social distancing will need to remain in place to varying extents until new cases drop drastically. To know what actions can be taken to reopen the economy, testing for COVID-19 will need to expand dramatically, and antibody tests will need to be rolled out to the whole country. Undoubtedly, it will require a high wire balancing act between keeping people healthy while avoiding further damage to them economically. We can't forget that poverty, hunger, and the many detrimental effects of isolation can kill people too.